And today I'm here to discuss the policy process as an assignment for my policy and advocacy class within my graduate program. So today I was asked to cover a couple questions and have them posed to me, but unfortunately I don't have anyone to do them and my dog doesn't talk. So yeah, I'm just gonna kind of go over them on my own, and then I actually brought in Caleb, who is my boyfriend, and he actually works in the STEM area of science and technology and whatnot, and doing aerospace engineering, and asking him about what he thinks government does regarding arts and culture, which I was kind of disappointed in, but it's not his niche. And I wouldn't have known a lot of these things were involved in arts and culture had I not taken this class and been more involved in it. So some of the questions that were asked are, what are the sources of your policy beliefs? And I actually found a cool quote from Peter Carney. It's a blog that he does, and it's about the Advocacy Coalition framework. And he says that people engage in politics to translate their beliefs into actions. And I think that's really true. And I think that's one of the reasons that I want to be involved in policy. And he also says that there are three main types of different roles that people play in policy. And it's the core, which are fundamental and unlikely to change, such as religious backgrounds and these feelings that people feel really strongly about, and those viewpoints are not going to change. And in addition to that, so that's one. And then the second is the policy core, which is a little bit more specific, such as the balance between government and market, and the market area that we have to deal with, and we also have to bring into our thoughts when we're formulating policy. And also the last one is secondary aspects related to the implementation process of policy. And they're a little bit more likely to change, and this is a more flexible thing. And then one of the second questions was, what are some characteristics of classical liberal thought that have had an impact on public policy? And some of the characteristics of liberal classical thought are that people deserve basic human rights, which is definitely something that I can get on board with, because I think that's why I'm here. I want to be able to be informed and do these things for people. So the fact that people have right to ownership of property, they have ownership of land, rights to liberty, basic human rights, just because they're a person. I think that's totally something that, duh. So, and I'm pretty sure that this has a large impact on policy, and the fact that they also need to have views of personal freedom and expression in them. And these are things that could lead to advocacy and have an impact on the policy process. So the next question is, in the policy process, what's the importance of agenda setting? This is something we've covered a lot. And agenda setting can be a large amount of things, but the main point is that agenda setting is to bring light to a problem that you see. And in this agenda setting process, you bring light to your policy, and you need people to be supporting your cause and talking about it and amping it up, and it needs to be researched, and you need to have the back of the public to assist in reaching these goals to get this policy past this agenda setting process, so that you can move on to implication and getting all the gears moving. So that is yeah. And also, what's the process of evaluation? And evaluation is an important thing because you need feedback. That's where you get your feedback and how it was implemented, how you did your agenda setting. Did you solve the problem that you had employed within your policy? And so those can be done in multiple ways. Those can just be feedback from public or written feedback. There are a number of different ways to do evaluation. It's also a very important process of tying up and finishing your process. And in addition to that, the next question, number 4, is, what does government need? Or does a government need to have a definition for arts for it to have arts policy? And I think so. I think that government needs a definition, because they're not going to just be like, oh, that's art. That's why the NEA is here. why the NEA definition is actually so vague and large and all-encompassing and a fluid, workable definition in order for them to be able to pick and choose what they would like to fund. So I feel that the government should have a definition as well for arts policy, though I feel like they kind of do because of the NEA, but they also, they need to have a definition because it's something that needs to be defined. They can't just leave it undefined. So the one for the NEA would be perfect because they can turn it in any way they want, similar that the NEA does it. So the number 5 is name some important areas in arts and culture and what relevancy do they have for arts and cultural managers. So some of the things that are big right off the bat: arts education, human rights, that was again spoken about in the classical liberal characteristics of and how they impact policy. So this human rights and related to your cultural identity, that's something that is related to cultural and arts policy. In addition to that, censorship of arts, public arts regulations, rights of artists, the list is rather long. And what relevance do they have for arts and cultural leaders? I think that gives you a guidelines of what they're working in, which is a really big field. And again, this is not something that I was really aware of before doing this class, but it's something that is important, and you need to be aware of the aspects that you affect as being a cultural and leader and an arts manager. So that's important. In addition to that, the last question is, or well, not the last question, but what is a policy brief and how is it used? So policy is something that's written as your beliefs, and this is something that you see as a problem and you need changed. So a policy brief is a short or a long document. It doesn't have to be a document. It can be a pamphlet. It can be written. It can be written on a piece of paper. It can be spoken. It depends on the situation that you're applying this policy brief to. So the policy brief is a short or long document that states the things you are advocating for, and this is a statement of the problem you see, how you would like to fix it, or the things you think would fix it. So you're given your problem statement, which should be narrowed down and very specific, and then you must be very careful with your wording when writing these things and be simple and to the point. No fancy lingo, no terms that somebody else is not going to understand. Don't speak in your arts vocabulary or your government vocabulary. You need to speak clear and simple and to the point. And that's what the policy brief process, or well, the policy brief is. And then what is the difference between arts policy and arts advocacy? You can't have one without the other. They come hand in hand. Advocacy is part of the agenda setting process. So that's something that happens. Art advocacy happens after a policy has been been up for vote or discussed. It's something that you're rooting for it, like you're advocating. You want it done. This is something you feel strongly about. To be an advocate is to support or to back something, a cause, and in this case, it's a cause for arts. So that's pretty straight to the point. So I will change over to Caleb, and we'll hear a little bit of his mumbo jumbo about where he thinks art and policy comes from, which is not as much as I would like to have, but I'm working on the education process for him, and he's educating me in the engineering process that I don't understand. So here's Caleb.
Hello, my name is Bob.
Your name's not Bob. Okay. The question was, what does the federal government do regarding arts and culture in the United States?
We have monuments and national parks, national forests. We have museums
Oh, do they?
for history, for science, for culturally. observances. I mean, they probably are the ones that make the policy for what holidays civilians and military get off. And cultural. I just can't think of anything. I have my coffee.